Hello and welcome back to the Restricted View podcast. As always, I am Chris.
And I am Deborah.
And we hope you took our advice at the end of the last podcast to go and see more shows, because we certainly didn't. And we haven't seen any shows this week. Very, very sorry about that.
No, but we've been wearing a mask, so I mean, that's kind of half the advice done. That's what I said to do.
Oh yes, sorry. I was trying to think what you were.
It was a double advice right at the end, you know.
Right, I was trying to work out what the relevance of that was, and then yes, we did give two pieces of advice at the end of the last podcast: wear a mask and see more shows. But we have been wearing masks, yes. Not at home. We haven't been wandering around the house wearing masks.
No, not just yet. No.
I feel if you get a disease, I'll probably get it.
Yeah.
And vice versa. But so we haven't seen a show, so we haven't got a new review for you.
Boo.
We finally have one of our top 5 lists, which I really enjoy making and enjoy talking about.
I love making lists, and I'm just gonna do a disclaimer right now.
Yes, because Deborah always breaks the rules.
I always break the rules, but no, that's not it. Is that we are as at this moment we're recording this, and I'm still struggling with my number 5,
which is really odd. When you find out what the actual list is, you would have thought it'd be very easy to pick 5.
Yeah, so it's a bit like, you know, when you go to a restaurant and you don't know what to order, so you kind of just think, I'll decide when the waiter comes. And that's what I'm doing.
Oh, I see, yeah. So the pressure of the moment is going to make you finally go, it's this one.
It's this one, yeah. I think so, yeah.
Cool. Well, we hope you like lists. We love lists. They say love making them, love hearing them. So apologies for not having a new review. We will have a new review for you next week. But this week it is a top 5 list. It's a big one too, and I hope you'll enjoy it. In addition to that, of course, we have in our Far Too Many Notes section a discussion topic. One we've been putting off doing until we could do a bit more kind of preparation and research, because it is quite not a heavy topic, just a difficult one, a bit more thought process.
Yeah. It might require a part 2. I don't know.
While preparing for it, I was thinking this will definitely require.
That's because there's so much to it. So
we'll have more thoughts that will become apparent. We'll see more stuff, and we'll think we'll become more educated on the topic and have more insightful things to say. And of course, we have one of our tips, and we also, as always, have the news. And I think we should probably crack straight on into that.
So as you all know, if you've been listening to us, restrictions in the UK have been lifting, not very slowly, and one of the good things to come of it is, you know, all the theatre stuff that's coming back, and one of them that people were waiting anxiously to know if it was actually going to happen this year, because obviously it didn't happen last year.
Sorely missed last year, from what I hear.
It was, yes, is West End Live, which we have never been to.
We've never been to. It is a mark of shame, I guess, on our theatre resume, as our American colleagues would say.
Especially since I have a feeling I have definitely been in central London when it was happening. And surely you can hear it from lots of places.
Probably can.
Yeah, because central London's not actually that big.
So West End Live takes place in Trafalgar Square.
Yes.
The nearest tube stations would be Charing Cross and Embankment, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taking place, when is it, Deborah?
So it's taking place on the 18th and 19th of September this year. Usually weekends, I believe that's a weekend. And you have, so what is West End Live, if you don't know? So you have all these kind of pocket shows for musicals.
It's the world's most expensive promo.
Yeah, I guess that's a way of putting it. But it is free, isn't it?
It's free to go to. So I meant expensive. Expensive wasn't the word I prepared in my brain, and I just said the wrong word. World's most elaborate promo.
So you have a lot of West End shows doing kind of like 1 or 2 numbers.
They get 15-minute slots apparently.
Yeah, so you get to see, sample and savor a little bit of each show that's on currently, or sometimes that's about to open, because I think they've done shows that were about to open as well.
Yeah, I called it a promo because I think the idea is that you go along and you see a 15-minute slot from each show and you're like, oh, that one looks really good, I want to go see that. But I think what it's kind of turned into, people like us who just love the theatre going and getting a free 15-minute slot of each show.
Yeah, see their favourite numbers, because I assume they do the big ones.
They do the big ones. And it's not always, it's not just productions that get slots. I think, because I know the girl group Ida, one of whom's member I know from my days trading the boards once upon a time. They got a slot at one point, and ashamedly I didn't go to see. So I'm sorry about that, Sarah. I should have. If you get another slot, I will go and see it. Yeah, so it's not always just productions. It can be people who are in that field, like groups who sing those kind of numbers, for example.
That's fun. I wonder if they'll have drag race people this year.
That'd be
Exciting. Yes, because RuPaul UK only started, I think, last year. Or
do they sing and stuff?
They do.
Drag queens sing a lot.
They do lip syncs, but they also sing their own songs sometimes. So I wonder. I'd love to see Bimini and Lawrence Chaney fans. You'll have me.
We'll definitely. I'm unfortunately usually working weekends, but I'm sure we'll find a way to pop along and check out some of West End Live this year. But regardless of whether you have or haven't seen it before, 18th and 19th September 2021, West End Live is back. It's free. Go to Trafalgar Square, check it out, see the shows you love, and maybe you'll find a new show.
Maybe you'll be intrigued by a new number.
Exactly. So check out West End Live, 18th and 19th September. So on to our From the Cheap Seat section. As we said, this week, unfortunately, we do not have a review for you, but we do have our top 5 favourite musicals list. We didn't actually agree for a title, I think that's what we're calling it.
Yeah,
top 5 favourite musicals. So these are Chris and Deborah's top 5. There's mine and Deborah's. There's not
it's two lists rather than one list. Yeah.
Regular listeners will know that's how we do it, although we haven't done a list in weeks and weeks. So it's our current top 5 favourite musicals of all time. Now, tastes change. Things you've seen more recently, maybe. Well, not so much for me actually, but things you've wanted to see more recently may well kind of end up. People think musicals aren't unique in this, but I think they definitely are guilty of it to a huge extent. People tend to get obsessed with the current one they've seen recently, and they go back and see it a bunch of times. We're guilty of it. I think people are guilty of that in films and books and all kinds of media, but the musicals are no exception. I will also towards the end of my list I will have a few not honourable mentions in the just basically cheating and having a 6th, 7th and 8th in there, but a few honourable mentions, the point of which will be at another time in my life they would have been and have been in my top 5, but they're not anymore. Because I was obsessed at one point, but just not anymore. So my top 5 are definitely the ones that have kind of what's the word? The test of time.
Stood the test of time. Yes, I think it's the same thing for me. I think my top 5 has changed, and at the same time, some names are still there and have always been, and I don't think they will leave anytime soon. So I guess it's just interesting to see how we change and how I guess the past year made us change as well. And what have we been listening to as well? Since we can't go to the theatre or couldn't, what were we listening to? What was keeping us going?
Yes, and there'll be an opportunity for us to talk briefly, not be able to give a full review, but talk briefly about a few shows that we haven't been able to talk about up till now. I'm definitely, more so probably than any other topic we've ever asked you guys to comment about, I'm definitely most interested to hear your top 5 favourites as well.
Definitely.
So do head over to restricted.view on Instagram and let us know what you think of our lists and also what your own list would be. So this is strictly speaking musicals.
Yes, we'll do a play one.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So no plays, no ballet, no opera. I guess you can squeeze opera in. I mean, some... Anyway. It's top 5 favourite musicals, and without any further ado, my number 5 is the hardest one, the one that came closest to not being on the list. But for lack of a better, I decided it deserved a place ultimately. But this is definitely the one that would most appropriately for number 5 would most easily be supplanted. And it's an odd start. It might make me sound like I don't have any what's the word? Any class to start with. But it is Book of Mormon,
right?
By Trey Parker and Matt Stone of South Park fame.
Really, it's your number 5 now.
It's my number 5.
Wow.
Yeah. Why was it my number 1 once upon a time?
Oh yeah.
Well, look, it's still the test of time. It's still staying on the list.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in, I'd say, easily 2.5 to 3 years. So it's impressive. And I haven't listened to the soundtrack in as long, if not longer. I think the most recent interaction with that show was seeing it live. This was a holy grail show for me for a long time. When I lived in Ireland, it was playing the West End. You couldn't get a ticket for love nor money. The lottery was the only way to do it. One of the first times I ever met Deborah, we tried to get the lottery tickets and failed. Yeah. And we ended up seeing Spamalot instead. Which is alright. I think we ended up. You've won the lottery.
I've won the lottery a few times. I want to say 5 times.
Easily 3, because it's been 3 with me.
Yeah, well, I won it
Two of
with
them.
Lucia a couple of times, I think. Once with Lucia, yes.
Yeah,
So
so
yeah,
see,
maybe 4 times.
So I think didn't you win it with Okay, anyway, the point is
Take me to try lotteries with you. I win them.
Deborah's very lucky at them. So it was Holy Grail for me, which I think possibly added to the allure of it and made it kind of added to its prestige, its position in my reckoning. But it has to the test of time because basically it's if you don't know what it is, I'm sure most people who are listening to this do. It's essentially a comic musical about two Mormon missionaries who go to Uganda to try and convert the locals, which is what Mormon missionaries do. And it's essentially about a crisis of faith. I've never actually described the plot in genuine, serious terms before.
A crisis of faith.
But it's
Yeah.
essentially about a crisis of faith that two young Mormon missionaries go through. That's actually what it is. But it's a complete comedy though.
Yeah.
Although now I think about it, there is a genuine kind of story there, as a crisis of faith.
Also, it calls out the white colonizer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
It's a comedy which is very crude and doesn't hold back.
It's definitely
It
not for
makes-
everyone, I think, as well. It's a very specific kind of type of humor
because
that
it's so rude and crude.
it's
But
very
it's
rude.
not funny because it's rude and crude. It's funny because it makes. So one of my favorite things about it is the fact that it makes enormous fun out of people, out of white colonizers, out of homophobes. At least said homophobes, and nasty bigots like that. And the thing I love about it so much is the way it makes fun of these people is in such a way that I can see a white supremacist or a homophobe sitting in the audience laughing along, not realizing
It's about them.
not realizing they're the butt of the joke.
Yep.
Which I don't know, for some reason that just makes me think it's even. It brings me joy, the idea that because you can totally see someone not understanding that they're the butt of the joke.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that just in one way that's not nice. I guess that they'd be laughing along with us, thinking that they're the top. But I don't know. I kind of like the idea of a nasty bigot sitting in the audience thinking that they're right and agree with the musical, but actually the musical's saying you're the one.
Yeah, I think I've seen Book of Mormon being, I guess, maybe misinterpreted. And who am I to say this? Maybe it is. Maybe they're interpreting it correctly, and I'm not. But I actually think that it is the white supremacists and the homophobes who are actually the butt of the joke all the time, and
Yes,
not
of course it
the other
is.
way around. And even the fact that there's a whole song about turning off your gay feelings, which is obviously not a thing.
And I did see some criticism at once upon a time to that. To that number.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Andrew Rannells, who creates the role of Elder Price, is a member of the LGBT community. Which I guess I find it hard to. I think it's hard to argue that the song is homophobic as opposed to making fun of homophobes when the singer is a member of that community.
Yeah, and I think everything is done. All the numbers are sung in this kind of. It's not really deep or sincere. It's actually being just mocking these things and making fun of racists and homophobes all the time. So it's not trying to. It's not actually. It's just ironic and sarcastic all the time.
Yeah, and it does it in a tremendously funny way, but it's just incredibly funny comedy. But also the music is damn good. I remember a friend of mine saying back when Book of Mormon came out, saying that when he saw the South Park movie, which is a musical, he realized that he knew Trey Parker and Mastodon had a proper musical in them, and sure enough, they did. And this is it, and it is like the soundtrack is well worth listening to without out of context, just for its music and its comedy.
Yeah.
And seeing this on stage, I've seen it about 5-6 times now, unparalleled. And I think I don't think comedy musicals really are particularly well represented on my list. So I think I'm glad that I have this kind of fit in that role.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Book of Mormon. It's not like, don't get me wrong, it's not a musical masterpiece. The music itself isn't a masterpiece in the same way that something like Les Mis might be considered a musical masterpiece in terms of musicality, but the music is excellent. It's incredibly funny, and it's a wonderful show.
Yeah. So as I said before, as I said in the intro, for me, my number 5 was a bit of a struggle because I used to have my top 5 set in stone, and now I'm not so sure anymore. And I think my number 5 comes from this. It comes from my needs in the past year, I think. the kind of a sense of community and hope that I get from that show. And I think it'll surprise you to hear my number 5. But my number 5, as of today, this could change. I'm sure we'll revisit this list at some point. But my number 5 is Come From Away.
Not really that surprised. I did wonder if it might make your list.
So Come From Away is by Irene Sankoff and David Hein, I believe. And it's if you don't know, it's a show about 9/11, but it is actually about what happened in this small town of Gander in Newfoundland, when a lot of planes were sent there instead of planes which were going through the US, either New York or any other city. They were all diverted to Gander, this kind of tiny town that had it did not have the means to accommodate all these people. And the show is essentially about this kind of unlikely group of people kind of getting together and at the most difficult of times. So I don't know, it's just very, very beautiful, and I don't know, I think I kind of need that now. I kind of need to feel like we are connected, and that people can be good and can be, I don't know, good to each other, which is, the pandemic has made it hard to feel.
Right? It's a small community who all know each other, very, very tiny village style community, and then they suddenly have thousands of people, who are all, not all sorts of people. And at one point, like, they're told they were going to like do a big massive barbecue essentially, and one of the characters asked one of the passengers, can you basically go and collect these barbecues, and he feels really weird about it,
taking a barbecue from someone's back garden,
and the guy helps him steal his own barbecue.
Yes.
He's like, he's not actually stealing it, but his perception is that the guy came out and helped me steal his barbecue.
Yeah. And apart from the message of the show, I just really love I love the way it's done. The bands on stage and the actors are all very, very talented. I think the music's very, very nice and very beautiful. It's, I don't know, it's feel good. It'll make you cry, but it's feel good.
It's very definitely feel good.
Yeah.
Does it make you cry?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it makes me cry.
I've seen it like 2 or 3 times, and I'm trying to remember how it ends. I know it ends. I know how it resolves. I'm trying to remember like just the.
Also, I quite like the fact that it's based on real people.
Yeah.
So all the characters are based on real people, and at the theater you have pictures of the cast members of the original production with the people they are playing. Mm-hmm. And that's so nice, and it's nice to think that is possible, that people can be good and can be nice and sharing. And the people, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from. That sense of community is definitely something that was, that is, I can understand the need for it. The desire for right now, this time of everyone's life, this time of history, and I can see how Come From Away kind of fulfills that. And we're hoping to go back and see it. Actually, it's literally opened.
Last week, I think.
A week ago.
Yeah.
It was last Thursday or Wednesday.
Yeah.
We're hoping to go back and see it very soon. We'll probably bring you a review.
That'd be nice.
Even though we've seen it a handful of times, it is reopened. It's still a relatively new show.
Yeah, but I think that everything that it does as well, as a show, not just the feel or even the music, but then you have the actors and they play several characters, which I quite like. I think all the actors in it have to be very talented and versatile, because they play several different roles and they do several different things, and they're different each time as well, so you know who they're playing. I highly recommend Come From Away, and it made my list this time.
So my number 4, I don't think this will surprise you, per se, but this kind of is it's noteworthy in the sense that it's very much a Deborah's influence on me. I think a sign of Deborah's influence on me and on my tastes, that it has managed to stay on my list over many years now, and it is Once by Glenn Hansard and Marketa Iglova, which actually is a musical essentially from my home country of Ireland, which it's based on a film which I'd never seen. I'd completely missed it. I suppose I'm not a huge film watcher, which may explain it, but Deborah from Brazil had to tell me about it and took me to see it in the West End, and I really loved it, and I've grown to love it more and more over the years. We've seen multiple productions and touring productions and West End production. We've seen it in Dublin a couple of times, and I don't think it's one I ever would have gone to see. without you. I don't think, even if I had, I don't think I would have. It would have. I don't think I would have liked it as much if I hadn't seen it with you.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, I think it's definitely a heavy influence from you. But that's good. That's kind of, it represents me. I suppose this is probably at the entry of my list. It represents me kind of opening my taste a bit.
Yeah, I guess poor Chris. He's been dragged to every single production of ones that is put near us,
I'm not dragged it. I realise that.
but also to see Glenn Hanser whenever he comes to London, which we've done.
You've even met Glenn Hanser once.
We have, and I had the I had the pleasure and opportunity to tell him how important his music was to me.
Isn't the photo of you with him very here?
Oh, it's not here anymore. Yes, I have one here. Yes, but there's a picture of him there. So yeah.
But once, as I said, it's about the place in the film of the same name. Is basically about an Irish busker who meets a Czech. It's based in Dublin.
It's a boy and a girl.
Boy meets
Guy,
girl.
sorry.
Meets girl. Yeah. She meets a Czech immigrant who lives in Dublin. Because she needs her vacuum cleaner fixed, and he works in a vacuum cleaner repair shop with his father. But he's a busker. He loves music is kind of his passion. He's got a broken heart from a previous relationship. And she
he's a bit stuck in life.
Yeah, he's a bit stopped, as she says.
Stopped.
It's basically it's stuff happens insofar as they go and record a song so he can hopefully kind of get a bit of a music career going on. It's not like one of those Hollywood films where he becomes a rock star or something. He just puts together a demo so he can hopefully get some sort of become a professional musician of some kind. She helps him with that, and it's kind of basically he's stopped, and then within 5 days of meeting her, he kind of actually gets off his butt and does stuff. Basically, does stuff he wants to do, and he kind of really helps her, and she really helps him. And I always say one of my favorite kind of shows, the shows where nothing really happens. And as I said, stuff technically happens insofar as they record a record and stuff. But ultimately, it's just about the people, the characters there, and how they interact with each other, and how they affect each other, and their emotional journeys of their everyday normal life, emotional journeys.
It's such the changes, I think, from start to finish are so micro. They're so tiny. The little changes in their lives, and I also love the fact that unlike the film, so the film is by John Carney, and I love the film, but the script of the play by Enda Walsh it's brilliant, and I think that what he does is he basically brings all the secondary characters to light.
Actually, once might come up in our far too many notes section, the discussion topic actually.
Ooh.
That particular. So let's leave it there actually. That
fair
aspect
enough.
of
Fair
it.
enough. Yes, but it's a great show.
Yeah. So music by Glenn Hanser and Magnetic Love, as I mentioned. They wrote and added some new tracks for the stage show, as well as most, if not all, the ones from the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the music's fantastic. It's Glenn Hanser, as Deborah said, we've seen him in concert himself as well. He's a fantastic singer-songwriter from classics such as I Am the Banana Man. That's just a comic one he does. But no, he's like Falling Slowly.
Well, Falling Slowly won the
that
Oscar.
won the
Yeah.
Oscar. But my favourite, it's not my favourite, but I think my favourite is probably Sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
Which is an absolutely beautiful, haunting solo ballad. It's a man's guitar.
Which is basically the musical.
Well, yeah,
You've just described the whole show. Yes. Yeah, I do love that show.
Incredible, brilliant music, unbelievably simple, basic story, but so human.
That is very true.
So that's why it's my number 4.
Number 4, yeah. So my number 4 is a classic, and I felt it had to make my list. I know it's like, it's maybe not. It's not dated, but it's just like it's one that most people have seen. It's the first one I have ever seen on stage, and it's Phantom of the Opera. It had to be there.
I'm more surprised by this than Come From Away.
Really? No, Phantom always made my top 5 list because of what it means, and I think sometimes top 5 is not just about quality; it's also kind of about what it means. It's the first ever musical I saw on stage, and it kind of triggered my love for stage shows more than I thought I liked them already, and I just it's a well-rounded show. And look, I know I debated if it was going to be Phantom or Les Mis, But I decided that I would always rather see Phantom than Les Mis if I had the choice.
Agreed.
I love Les Mis as well. I think that, but I just think that Phantom is a bit. There's a bit less suffering, and and I think that's why I prefer it. And I'm not necessarily saying the music's better or anything. I just kind of I enjoy Phantom. I enjoy Phantom of the Opera. There's so many numbers I enjoy. I don't usually, and I was saying to Chris when I was trying to compile the list, I was saying to him, most of these shows are shows that I don't like. When I'm at the theater, I'm like, okay, we have to get through this song now. I don't have that with these shows. Mostly,
I do. For the Phantom, I have one.
Which one?
I can't remember the name of it now. The one. All I Ask of You.
Oh no!
Like
Oh, I like. So see, I like that.
The only good thing about All I Ask of You is the end of it where Phantom was snooping on them.
Sure. I like that song.
And this one's probably more controversial. I'm not a big fan of Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again either.
Oh no, I don't like. That's the one I have to skip. Okay, fair enough. That's the one I would skip. But most of the show.
Loves that number.
Okay, yeah. See, it is a good show. It's a well-rounded show. It's a big show, so it's a show that it's always a big deal.
Although actually, I think I know why. I think I can identify why my mum likes that. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
Because my mum lost her father quite young.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about missing your past father.
Yeah, so I guess that as with many works of art, they resonate with you differently depending on the time of your life. So
and your experience. Well, I mean,
in your experience, yes.
My mother's not young now.
No, I mean time of your life as in experience.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, exactly. It's part of her lived experience now that song means something to her, and that's really nice.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, Phantom. I always enjoy going to it.
You still look at young mum. Don't worry.
I always enjoy going to Phantom, and I'll never say no to it. Unfortunately, I always find the tickets are a bit too expensive. I think one day we'll just have to do a rant, about how expensive tickets are.
Particularly Phantom. Just because I think it's all the tourists go to Phantom, which is fine. Keep going, tourists. You're very welcome. But somehow it's driving the ticket price.
It does drive them up, yeah. But yes, I Phantom is my number 4. I don't know what else to say about it. I think it's just kind of a well-rounded classic show that you kind of have to see.
Yeah.
It's kind of have to be. It has if you enjoy musicals, it has to be on your list of shows to see. You kind of have to have seen it. And to me, it just brings back memories of having seen it with my mum for the first show I've ever saw. I saw it with my mum. My mum always mentions the chandelier, because she always mentions that big moment in theater. So it's just a fun show.
Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, and Notes. I love Notes.
Yeah, which one of our sections is named after.
Yes, far too many notes.
Point of No Return. It's got some great songs in it. Cool. So my number 3. On to my number 3. It is this one's definitely a newer musical, and I think at one point it would have been my number 1, but it slipped down to my number 2. My number 3. Probably just because, just because the novelty's worn off a little bit, but it's still well up there. And very sorry, theatre nerds. Hamilton has only made number 3.
Can I make an interruption here?
Mm-hmm.
Hamilton's my number 3.
Oh, that's super useful.
Yeah.
There's no crossover yet.
No, Hamilton's my number 3.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
I
assume Once Upon a Time would have been your number 1 as well.
It was never my number 1.
Really?
No,
never?
No. Surely you know what my number 1 is, and it's never changed.
But would it not even have beaten it just kind of like literally in the week that you saw it for the first time? It was so exciting, and you sat in the front row, a couple rows back, and
maybe.
You know what I mean? It's
yeah, sure. Maybe.
Maybe you're not as what's the word?
Maybe you're underestimating how much I like my number 1.
Maybe not as it's not as fickle as me. I was thinking. I think people one do change on a weekly basis sometimes based on what they've based on seeing the big one, the big new
maybe
show.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hamilton. Deborah and I have seen it a good few times.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it. I want to say 3 times. You've seen it 4, if not 5 times.
5 times, yeah.
We've also obviously watched the Disney Plus filmed version. We've listened to the soundtrack many times. We're big fans.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there isn't a lot to say that hasn't been said about Hamilton at this stage.
It is obviously a story of. We didn't mention the story of Phantom of the Opera, for example, but I think everyone knows that it was based on the book by Gaston Leroux.
Mm-hmm.
Not this though. This is based on. They say it's by Lin-Manuel Miranda. He says it's based on the Hamilton book, biography book, but it's not really. It's just based on. It's just based on the life
Hamilton's
of
story,
Hamilton, right?
but it's also almost kind of. I'm not sure, almost speculative fiction, because it's not,
Yes, it is speculative
it's not,
fiction.
it's not what happened.
Of Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers of the United States
Yeah.
of America.
And it's a different version. It's almost a different reality. If you remember the multiverse episodes, it's almost a different reality.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And I really enjoy. I think the music is fabulous. I think the music is just great.
Yeah, it's very clever music as well. There's a lot going on in the like, musically speaking.
Yeah, not just lyric wise, but also musically speaking. I don't understand a lot of it, but you can watch videos on YouTube about it.
Yeah, there's some lovely things like stuff I noticed myself on. I think I'd already seen it multiple times. And it was just one day we were sitting at the living room playing a board game or painting or doing something, and we had a soundtrack on. And I noticed, and I know that in the one of the very last numbers, the world is it called The World Was Wide Enough? Is that actually the name of the World Was Wide Enough? I think it is. Anyway, the final climactic moment, where they're building up to the climactic moment. There are bells. I think it sounds like a glockenspiel or xylophone. I don't actually know what it is, but it sounds like that. There's a chiming the melody of My Shot, which is about so it's just very lightly so it's very this last number is kind of a threat. It has a kind of a threatening, ominous sound to it, because it's about it's basically about Hamilton's kind of deeds kind of catching up with him essentially.
Yeah.
He's quite blasé the way he lives. He disregards people a lot. It's kind of that's catching up with him. And there's just this, and then you just hear this chime of My Shot, the melody of My Shot, and that song's about his opportunity and about having your life ahead of you, and you can do anything and be anything, and you've got one chance, kind of, and basically do the best you can. And it's kind of this really essentially melancholic feeling of it gives us a melancholic signal of kind of he had one chance and this is where it's gone him.
Yeah.
For better or worse, And you can,
not just the literal.
It's not judgmental necessarily. I'm very judgmental of the character of Hamilton, the way he conducts himself. But but the composer Miranda's not necessarily being judgmental. He's just saying, judge for yourself. Look, for all the things he has achieved and all the mistakes he's made, because he's done great things and very foolish things. This is where it's got him now. This was his one shot, and this is where he ended up. And now you're going to see how this plays out. I don't know. That's just really that's not new or anything. People use old. People. I mean, like Sondheim basically uses the same three notes throughout the entirety of West Side Story, incredibly cleverly as well. And it's not new or anything, but I don't know. I think Miranda did it in a way that I don't know that's people could understand and comprehend and actually get because when Sondheim used those same three notes, it over and over again in very clever. It's very clever on a kind of on a what's the word, like a theoretical level that you can analyze and go, oh, that was very clever. When you're actually watching it, I don't really think it does anything.
I haven't seen West Side Story, so I haven't really listened to the soundtrack, so I don't really have an opinion on it at the moment. But I understand what you're saying, and I do think Hamilton does a lot of clever things. It's a well written musical, and it does a lot of clever things with the plot, with the way. I mean, look, I could talk for hours about the narration of Hamilton and who's telling the story,
who's the main character,
so I think there's a lot to unpack, and I'm sure if let us know, we can talk about it. Let us know if you want to hear us talk about it.
Probably easily be a discussion topic by itself at some point.
There's quite a lot to talk about. But yeah, it's definitely a kind of a very well-rounded, good show, and I feel that it's one of those weirdly, and I think people sometimes a little prejudiced and like, oh, I don't like rap, I don't like hip hop, so I won't see it. It's not just that, and even the rap and hip hop, even if you don't like that particular type of music, you will. Trust me, you will enjoy that in Hamilton because it's so well done and so well inserted in the plot.
People often kind of say of rap, some people say it in a positive way and other people in a disparaging way, that rap is basically just poetry set to music. I've heard it said as a compliment and an insult, and it's kind of true, definitely. In Hamilton, it's completely true. Yeah. Like in Hamilton, I've said before, I think I probably was inaccurate, I've said this before, I've said that Hamilton is actually a hip-hop musical, not a rap musical, with like a couple of rap numbers. I stand by that to a certain extent, because it is, I think it's mostly hip-hop. There's a lot of, as opposed to rap, but I'm not an expert in this. But even the rap numbers are more like, because the dialogue is quote unquote rap, but it's not. It doesn't sound like traditional rap. It is spoken verse.
It's
almost
almost
Shakespearean.
It's almost also like slam poetry. So if you know that, it's almost like that as well. Just it's meant to be listened to. It's not meant to, so like if you and weirdly I feel that Hamilton, especially the cabinet battles, right? Because those are the main rap numbers. They are not as interesting to listen to in the soundtrack, but if you actually see it, either be it the recorded version or on stage, if you actually see it, it's just so powerful.
I do love listening to it, like, I think because
the lyrics are so clever.
The lyrics are great throughout, but I think those are examples of amazingly clever lyrics.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
Miranda's a genius from the perspective of just the music and the lyrics and the combination thereof. I'm not a big fan of him. His actual own performance of Hamilton, at all. Really not a big fan of it. But I think, but composition wise, I think. I mean, yeah, this I can't. It's probably even of all my top five. I think Hamilton's probably the best kind of achievement from a composition perspective, even more so than my 1 and 2.
Oh wow!
Probably just from a.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. It's so well done and cleverly woven together, and
I wonder how long he was working on it. Like how many years? I think probably I don't know.
Quite a while, I say. Yeah. Because he started because he
the only criticism is he uses the word amoral incorrectly. He says he says amoral, and he means immoral, or the character who says it just doesn't know what it means, and it makes no sense.
Okay.
He says, because Burr says, "You call me amoral, a dangerous disgrace." Amoral means not related to morality, so neither moral nor immoral.
Yeah, but maybe that's it, because he's trying to say that Burr. Well, we're going to discuss it.
A politician being amoral would actually be quite a good thing in a way. No, not being in the sphere of morality, doing what's objectively best for the people, rather than worrying about morality.
Yeah, but that's not how Hamilton sees the world.
Arguably, that's a good. I'm not saying it is. Arguably, that could be. One could present. It probably wouldn't be a good thing, but one could present an argument that a politician being amoral would actually be good, but a politician being immoral is definitely bad. So I don't understand. I think Randa just didn't understand the difference in the two words.
both of them would have worked rhymed like song wise. So I don't know.
I always assumed the word was immoral, but then I saw the words in the Hamilton, and it's amoral. So
okay.
Strange.
Well, if you want to hear our thoughts on this, let us know, because we can definitely discuss Hamilton.
Deep character dive into Baron Burr and Alexander Hamilton.
Yes.
Coming your way whenever you ask for it.
Yeah, so Hamilton's also or not. Yes, Hamilton's also my top three, as I said. So that was
number
handy.
3. Yeah, it was.
No, number 3. Yeah.
We'll just skip you and go straight to my number 2 then.
Yes, go for it.
So my number 2, which, as I said, once upon a time would have been briefly beaten by Hamilton, but it's retaken its rightful place as number 2 or number 1. But number 2, I think, is where it'll have to live, probably forever. Is due to my love of board games, is chess.
I had a feeling it was going to be there.
It's just because I love board games. That's it. No, it's not.
And end of conversation.
It's so music by Benny Andersson and now I can never pronounce his second name. And Bjorn Ulvaeus.
It's the ABBA guys.
Benny Andersson and Bjorn Ulvaeus. Benny and Bjorn. Yes, music by the gentleman from ABBA, who wrote all ABBA's music as well. I don't think the girls. I think they don't. I don't think they win they help the composition.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think so.
But yeah, so chess is a story of two chess players, world chess grandmasters, loosely based on Bobby Fischer and is it Kasparov or no, it's Karpov.
Yes,
Karpov. Fischer and Karpov, loosely based. I think Fischer more so. Although I know more about Bobby Fischer than I do about Karpov, so maybe that's why. Because I can definitely see the character of Freddy is. I can see he shares elements with Bobby Fischer. Bobby Fischer was notoriously quite difficult.
Anatoly is probably then based on Anatoly Karpov.
Makes sense. Well, in the original, they were just called the American and the Russian.
Right.
They got names later.
In the concept album.
But also in the original production, I think.
Okay.
The original production didn't have names for them. But anyway, that could be a whole topic. Characters not having names. Once is that as well. Anyway, it's a story about them, and it's once again, but like once, it's kind of a story where nothing happens, even though actually a lot happens, but nothing. It's hard to explain. It's more about the journey of the characters emotionally. So it's set during the Cold War, and for those who know their history, know that that chess matches were actually a really big thing in the Cold War. It was a really big one-upmanship, the World Chess Championship during the Cold War between because America and Russia were the two big players in the chess tournament. Still are, but I think China's really come a long way as well now in chess, grandmasters. And it's basically set. Yeah, the Russian Anatoly Servietsky is defending his title, and that's wrong. The American champion, Frederick Trumper, is defending his title from a new upstart. A new upstart, Anatoly Servietsky. And it's basically, it's. How do I explain what chess is about? It's about two men who question what matters to them, their career or their personal life. And they kind of both start in opposite places and end in opposite places.
Yes, and they don't actually. I guess neither of them really realizes that they could have something in between.
Yeah.
Which is a bit sad.
Does Freddie kind of get there in the end? I think he kind of does to some extent.
Maybe. I'm not sure. Yes, I love chess. We were very lucky to see Michael Ball playing Anatoly, and I will always remember Michael Ball singing Anthem in front of me. That was beautiful.
5 times.
Yes.
We saw it 5 times. We saw the wonderful Tim Hauer, who we've subsequently seen as the Phantom, actually.
Oh, yes.
We saw him as Freddie. I think from even more so than Anthem, I think Michael was singing Anthem. I think Tim Hauer singing Peter the Child is probably my highlight from that performance.
Because it's an unexpected highlight as well, isn't it? Because you didn't really know.
I love that. I love that song.
No, but you didn't really know Tim Howard that well. You didn't know what to expect,
I knew
right?
he was from Mike and the Mechanics, but I didn't know. I didn't know his vocal chops.
He did such a good job.
Yeah, we actually had the privilege of speaking to him afterwards briefly on one of the performances. He actually mentioned to us that he had to be dragged away by Cassidy Jensen because he kept telling. I was perfectly happy for him to keep telling us this stuff, but I think she was worried he was boring us.
I don't know.
But he wasn't. But he mentioned he just talked us through a bit of his process. I think he said he mentioned he had a son who's autistic, didn't he? Wasn't that?
No, he thought the character was autistic.
I thought he said he
didn't have a son. I think back then, his son was born.
I thought that was his first child, was it?
I'm not sure.
He mentioned. I thought maybe he said I can't remember. He had some experience with autism, I think, in his family, and he decided that he made sense for Freddie to have some form of autism.
Yes.
Or to be on the spectrum. It was just an interesting insight into his process, and you can definitely see it.
Yes, you could definitely see it, and he really knew what to do with the character. It was just great, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, and the whole production was just insane. It made wonderful use of film. Of live
yeah,
film
it really
recording.
did. Yeah.
Actually, now I think about it, I also saw Craig Revel Horwood's production of it back, I don't know, it's probably 8 or 9 years ago now, and it also used live. It kind of that was this actor musician setup.
Oh, that's nice.
And there were cameras in in like one of the trombones or something. I remember the trombones was a camera, but it actually worked as a camera.
Nice.
So because there's a heavy element of television. That the use of the television plays a large role in the story.
Yeah.
The production company, one of the characters, Walter's from the production company. Was Walter in our version we saw? Because he's not always in the version. No, I don't think he was. I think the character Walter wasn't in the version we saw. But sometimes there's a character called Walter who, because chess was heavily rewritten, basically.
It started as a concept album with Elaine Page and
Barbara Dixon.
Yeah. You will know one of the songs is it's.
I know him so well.
I know him so well. It's such a famous song.
And we mentioned Tim Hauer and Michael Ball. The production we saw also had Cassie Jensen, who were big fans of, and Alexandra Burke as well. And yeah, it basically I love the emotional journey, the story of the characters, the journey they go on, their soliloquies, Anthem about sense of place, Pity the Child about taking personal responsibility, where when you've kind of gone your whole life without taking personal responsibility. I love that mess. I just love that. I love that moment of self-realization.
It's great because he's just basically saying, I'll blame my parents for a long time, and I can still blame them, but I still need to take responsibility for who I am, which is true to all of us.
It's basically he's just basically being a nasty person. He's kind of finally called out on it, and he kind of ends up at rock bottom because he's realized he's alienated everyone because he's being nasty,
Mm-hmm.
and he continues along. The song basically continues along. He's continuing to live in denial, saying, "No, it's everyone else's fault. It's not my fault." And throughout the course of the song, he kind of finally starts to take a bit of personal responsibility for his life.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just really like that.
It's a great song, and I mean, Florence is such a great character as well.
She's fantastic songs as well.
And she has
Side.
Nobody's Side is possibly one of it's one of my. We'll do a list of favorite songs, and I'll let you know more about it. But it's definitely one of my favorites.
Chess could easily be all my top 5 favorite songs. Like just absolutely incredible music, and you can really feel the ABBA influence, and yet it doesn't sound anything like ABBA.
I think you can feel the influence because of the time when it was written. It's all kind of a music
80s.
of its time. Yeah, it's music of its time in the best possible way.
It's
in the best possible way. Yeah.
Just look, bafflingly fantastic music and a very moving, character-driven story. Chess, my number 2. Go see it
when it's here or near you. So my number 2, and I have a suspicion it might be on your list, but we'll see. So my number 2 is Blood Brothers.
I probably should jump in and say it's my number 1.
Yeah, I thought so. Yes, so Blood Brothers by Willie Russell. I have spoken to English friends who have studied this in school, and some of them don't have the best memories of it. And I guess that's one of the things that happens when you have to study something for an exam. You kind of resent it a little bit, so you never get to fully appreciate it for just being art. And unless you kind of open yourself to it later in life to do it. But and so I understand some people being reluctant to maybe go see it again because they have studied it in school and are a bit traumatized. But I didn't know anything about it. I remember the first time we saw it, we actually didn't see it in London. We went to Windsor to see it. It was the touring production, which seems to be always on.
Despite the fact that I had not seen it in 12 years, something like that. I saw it was on Windsor and took it, and I'm a homebody. I like staying at home. I don't like leaving the house, let alone the city. I dragged Deborah to Windsor to see it.
Yes, we went to Windsor specifically to see Blood Brothers. We
did some Christmas shopping. It was a lovely day out.
No, it was. But the main, the main of the objective of the day was Blood Brothers, and it was so worth it. If you know me, you know I am a crier, and oh my God, did I cry!
I have a very vivid memory of walking from the theatre back to the station to get a train back to London, and Deborah was still in floods of tears.
Yes, I cried all the way to the train station. I'm not ashamed of it. I couldn't do anything about it.
Deborah got to see it without. I don't think you had a clue.
I knew nothing about it. And weirdly,
I had told you the two characters die because, and
that's how it opens.
Because it opens telling you the very first words of the entire show are, "Have you ever heard the story of the Johnston twins as like each other as new two pins? How one was kept, one was given away, and they were born and died on the self same day." So that's you know what happens.
It's just such a good. Oh my God, how it's so good, so well written. That it has great songs.
Nature versus nurture is a major theme.
Yes, but also class.
Class.
And the class system. And
can we blame superstition for what came to pass, or is it what we, the English, have come to know as class?
Yes, it's class. And it's very odd. And again, it's for someone who comes from a very kind of. From a country where inequality is so that sees the extremes of inequality,
even more so than here.
Even more so than here, but then at the same time, I think the English, and this is the a foreigner's observations on the English are more obsessed with class.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's an obsession that kind of that it doesn't matter how much of a self-made person you are, how much you've come, how far you've come, you'll always be. You are always defined by where you came from.
Yes, indeed.
And the way you speak as well, which it's something that we have a lot less of in Brazil. But the way you speak, your accent, so there's a lot of things that the musical touches on so well. It's just such a good story. Oh my goodness, it's so good.
And weirdly enough, though, for the top 5 musical list, this my top of all 5 of my shows, this probably has the weakest soundtrack.
And it still has great songs.
But it's still, yes, and some of the songs are great. And they're great for different reasons. Like, for example, Take a Letter, Miss Jones is a very fun number musically. It's fun, it's nice, fun music, and very upbeat music, oddly enough. and it's very nice. I really enjoy listening to that song because I think it's got really great male harmony. At one point, really, really lovely to listen to male harmony. But the reason the song is so wonderful and resonates so is actually it's because of the theme of it. It's the story of it's about a group of men being laid off from work.
Yes, and then the person who lays them off is laid off herself because she is not the owner of the factory.
She's secretary sending out the letters.
Yeah, it's that subtle reminder that you're always closer to a food bank than you are to Jeff Bezos.
Yeah,
it's just subtle reminder there.
You've been a perfect puppet. Yes, that's right, Miss Jones. You've got it.
Yeah,
that's.
It's just brilliant. It has one of the most wonderful and brilliant and thought-provoking use of narrator I've ever seen on stage. Yeah. Usually I would be a bit reluctant approaching work that like on stage they use as a narrator to tell us what's happening.
It can feel like a crutch.
I could absolutely feel, and it could. In a lot of the time, it is used as a crutch. It's used because you can't show us, so you have to tell us. But not with Blood Brothers. That does not happen. The narrator is such a fantastic figure. Chris and I have easily spent a few hours of our lives discussing the role of the narrator in Blood Brothers because that's the nerds we are.
I guarantee that's a A-levels or GCSE level question.
Yes, I love to do it.
Discuss the role of the narrator in Blood Brothers. I bet you that's been asked every exam. I guarantee it.
And I mean, look, there's a lot to say.
There is.
Yeah, so Blood Brothers made my number 2. I love the show. Love it. I love it.
Making you cry.
Oh, it makes me cry like a baby.
If you know the show, she starts crying a lot earlier than you think.
Oh yeah, so I started crying.
Don't get too many spoilers.
No, but I started crying. I think I'd say 1/3 of the way into the second half.
During when the topic of mental health comes up.
Oh yeah, I find it heartbreaking. It's like it's like it shatters my life.
Also, the actor, I can't remember his name, which is a terrible crime, but the actor who plays Mickey in, I think he's left now.
I think he has left. Yes,
we
saw
him 3 or 4 times.
Yeah,
it was the touring production. Mickey was a phenomenal actor. He was so good at that role.
He was so good. Even to the quirks, to pulling his sleeve over his hands, like little things that he used to do that just nail the character so well. He does it as an adult as he did as a child. It's just oh my god, it's just. Oh,
that's actually worth mentioning, the fact that so you follow these brothers from, I think the first time you see them on stage, apart from when they're babies and they're not real people, obviously.
They're 7.
They're nearly 8.
Nearly 8.
Nearly 8.
7. They're 7 then, yeah.
They're 7, yeah. And the same adult actors, 5'11", 6'2", whatever height they are, play the characters from the age of 8 to the age of to adulthood.
Yeah.
And that's bizarre, and it works.
And it works so well.
This scene actually of the entire ensemble, all of them are being children.
Yeah.
There's a whole play song.
Look, even the fact that they use the actor who plays the father of the boys, then also later on plays he's reused, and he plays all the men who are.
All the authority figures.
All the authority figures, but more so than
the policeman.
But more so than authority figures, a lot of the time they're also kind of in the way of these characters kind of being able to do things with their lives. So they always they go to Mrs. Johnston and try to get money, like to get the money that she owes them. Yeah. And they So there's a lot. Oh, it's just so well done. The reuse of this actor is so clever as well. It just works. Sometimes plays reuse actors and like why are they doing this? No, it just kind of works.
Just because he had the actor, yeah. But there's thought put into which actor plays which multiple characters, basically.
Yeah, it's just really well done.
And yeah, the story is phenomenal, incredibly moving, very thought provoking, well worthy of discussion. And the music is, whilst probably the weakest music of the list of the 5 I've given, is still excellent. It's still very enjoyable music, but then also takes on a profound new level of enjoyment when coupled with the topic or theme or lyrics of what that song is actually about.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was your number 1 as well, wasn't it?
Number 2 and my number 1. Yeah, so that's the thing. Like I said, I hadn't seen it in like 12 years or something, and I still immediately, when I had the opportunity, was like, yeah, I really want to take Deborah to see that, because this one stands the time for me. It's one of the most profound theatrical experiences I think that there is this just incredible story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
I think this one will always be my number 1. I don't think it will ever be topped.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know where to place it, and it's definitely like thinking about it. It is my number two because my number one is a show we talked about already, and it's Once. Once,
Yeah, I assumed as much.
Once has been my number one for years, and I don't know if it'll ever change. Look. I think it's Brendan Gleeson who said that art makes you feel less alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once,
I don't think he originally said it, but I think he did.
well, he might not be the original owner of the quote,
Yeah.
but he's definitely quoted it, and it's definitely true for once. I just love that show. I will always go see it. Always go see it. If I can, I will pay the money to go see it. Basically, I will not have second thoughts. I think this is true to Blood Brothers, and Blood Brothers is not. And this is, I guess, the difference for me because Blood Brothers is a lot of work to go see. It's a lot of emotional turmoil and work to see.
I don't consider. I appreciate. I agree with you. When you're viewing it, there's a lot of work involved, but I find it in such an enjoyable, engaging way.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
I never think of it as. I would never refuse to go Blood Brothers because I was mentally tired and I wasn't.
Not mentally tired.
Because I would still be capable of engaging with it fully because it just means so
No,
much.
I think I will always be able to engage with it as well. It's just that
I'd be willing to as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes I feel it's not an easy watch, I guess. And once it's a bit easier for me. I think, I don't know. It's just it ticks all the boxes for me, and we talked about it, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it in depth at some point because if it comes back, we'll definitely review it and discuss it. A bit like Hamilton, we can definitely discuss Once so well. But it's such a simple story, and it's the most kind of age-old story of, boy meets girl, and stuff happens. And then they go their separate ways.
It might sound boring and uninspiring, but it's not.
And it's one of those plays, and I remember one of those shows. I remember that when I first saw Once, I remember the lady behind me, when it ended, she said, okay, so is that over? Where's the rest of it? And it's just one of those that you want more, but I think the way it ends is perfect. So I think
she possibly didn't appreciate the subtlety of storytelling and how it doesn't have to have a
maybe not
solid resolution.
Well, I particularly love I love open-ended stories. And I love stories where, as Chris said, where nothing really happens, but a lot happens. But everything happens.
It all happens internally inside the characters.
And it's such a challenge to do that in a more visual medium as well. Because in books, obviously, much easier. I say easier, still not easy, but it's much easier because you can describe thoughts and you can write them down. But with I guess film and shows and theatre is just hard to do, and I think Once does that brilliantly.
So we had 3 crossover, didn't we?
We did, yeah. So 3. We had Once, we had Blood Brothers, and we had Hamilton. So all my top 3.
My unique ones were Book of Mormon and Chess. What were your ones?
Phantom and Come From Away.
Yes. So, speaking of Phantom, I just want to briefly give a quick. I meant this between 2 and 1, but I forgot. I just want to give a few honorable mentions. These are not a way of cheating my number 6, number 7. These are completely unlisted. These are just ones, just briefly. First of all, disclaimer. I know Dear Evan Hansen's very popular. We haven't seen it yet. We're going to be seeing it when it reopens. I think in the first week or two, when it reopens in London. It's music by Stephen Levinson. I know it's very popular, so maybe that will end up on the top 5 list after we've seen it. Just disclaimer, if you're wondering why it's not on the list and you think it should have been, we haven't seen it yet. And just, there are 5 I just want to quickly mention that at one point or another in my life would have been on the list.
Okay.
Phantom at one point by Angela Weber.
Yeah.
Whistle Down the Wind at one point. Probably when I saw I've seen it 2 different productions of it. When I saw Jonathan Ansel from G4 play the man, I really loved that production, and I think at that point it would have been kind of on my list. I still love some of the songs from it. Notre Dame de Paris by Ricardo Cosciante, I think. That definitely would have been on my list at some point. Spring Awakening, probably back when I was in it. I definitely was obsessed with it for a long time. That's music by Duncan Sheik. And weirdly enough, Starlight Express. When I saw that in the Victoria Apollo, I became obsessed with it as a child. As a child, there was definitely a year or two where Starlight Express would be my absolute favourite musical of all time. I still really like it to this day. And when I'm in Germany next year, I do hope to go to Bochum and see the production in the designated Star Express theatre. Yes, there is a theatre in Bochum, a small town in Germany, which has built a theatre specifically to show Star Express because it has tracks and everything for them to skate around. And I have a friend who we go to. There's a board games convention we go to in Essen, another very small town in Germany, which is only about a 20-minute drive from Bochum. And one of the friends I go with is this friend we're going to see Dear Evan Hansen with, who also likes musicals, and I've convinced him to drive us down to see Starlight Express on one of the evenings.
I don't know Starlight Express. I have never seen it. I have been shown clips of it, and I think it looks insane.
It's insane.
Mad.
It's like Cats is insane for having humans representing cats. This is even more insane because the humans are trains.
I saw. I saw a video the other day of this girl. I think it was on TikTok, and she said that now that musicals are being made into films and getting into like. Everyone was getting to know their plot, like Hamilton, and people were like doing like think pieces and analyzing them because they're so much more accessible now that they're turning them into film. She was very much looking forward to Starlight Express turning into a film so people could analyze horny trains. That's what she called it. Not my word.
Horny trains?
Yes.
That's not what's that's literally no. Really? That's I've heard people say about cats. But I think that's actually a very odd reading of
she is not the first person I hear saying that about Starlight Express. Maybe your childhood brain didn't allow you to.
I've seen it as a teenager as well. That's wrong. No, because it's just not about that. But it just isn't.
But still, it would be interesting. I would love to read think pieces on trains.
Anyway, well, I actually genuinely, if you like musical theatre, you have to be a fan of musical theatre because it's very strange and niche. But if you are a big musical theatre fan, you've never seen Starlight Express, and you think it sounds and looks a bit odd, check it out. It's weirdly, it's very entertaining. Weirdly entertaining for what it is. But anyway, that would have been my list ones behind. Do you have any honorable mentions to mention?
I don't really have particularly ones that I can think of. I guess I haven't been going to shows as much as you, so I haven't had years and years for my taste to change so much. I think Book of Mormon would have made my list once upon a time. But as I said,
Chess and Devastated Chess would be a top 10 even. Chess?
Yeah, Chess would be on my top 10. Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would. But I think not top 5. Maybe has it ever made top 5? I'm not sure. Maybe would do. Maybe when we went to see it 5 times in a month.
The month during which we were seeing it every week.
Yeah, maybe then. Yes. I also thought weirdly. Yeah, I also thought that, and that was such a wonderful experience, and we actually saw it in French, and cause we're so cultured. But
literally, it was on for 4 days.
Yeah,
4 days.
It was a great production. I also weirdly thought, and this obviously didn't make my list, and I don't actually even know where it would be on the list, but there's a show I really, really like, and I'd like to see again. There's actually 2 of them that I really want to see again, and one of them is Little Shop of Horrors, because I love it, because it's just such a great night out. It's just such great fun at the theatre, and we got to see it at the open air theatre at Regent's Park. It was just the atmosphere, and you get your drink, and it's open air, and if the weather's good, and the music is so great.
We had Pims.
We had Pims, and it was hot, and it was lovely. And the other one that I really like the music. I don't know it as I don't know the music as well as I know the music to the 5.
Company?
No,
okay.
No. Well, I consider Company as well, the version, the more recent version. But it's Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah, I think once upon a time when we discussed our list, top 5 years ago, it was on your list.
Yeah, I just love Heaven on Their Minds. I love that song. But then there's too many songs in Jesus Christ Superstar that I like to skip.
There's quite a few
skips.
Yeah.
So I think that's the problem.
The character Judas thing is what makes that so interesting.
But I do love Company as well by Sondheim. The more recent version with like a female Bobby with Rosalind Craig. Rosalind Craig. Yes, I believe so. She was very good, and I really enjoyed that version. And I think that it has. It has one of the greatest songs describing relationships that I've ever heard in my entire life. So I think that's a great one.
Well, there you go. That was quite a lengthy list, actually, as it turned out.
Yeah.
We talked about...
it is our favourite musical. Kind of have to give it its time.
That's true. Yeah, so let us know, restricted.view on Instagram. Let us know your favourite musicals. Let us know what you thought of ours and why we're right or why we're wrong. But definitely let us know what your favourite musicals of all time are.
So this week's tip is to do with previews and show previews.
Yeah, the tip can actually be summed up basically in one word, which is go see previews.
Yeah. There's
one sentence.
Don't be afraid to go see. First of all, previews are usually cheaper.
Yeah, usually up to £10.
Up to £10, I'd say.
£10.
Yeah, I think I even have seen £15. I think there's a range there of cheapness.
£5 to £15
compared
cheaper.
to the price when the run actually starts properly, and there is no reason not to go see it. It's look.
So some people less in the know might be afraid that you're essentially seeing rehearsals or something. But you're not.
You're not. By the time it gets to previews, the productions are most of the time well-rounded and, ready to go.
It's an element there. They're just find their feet a little bit, but in ways that you will not notice at all because they're professionals.
Yeah, sometimes it could even have to do with the lighting, with the speed they do stuff backstage and like get props and things that you will not be aware of most of the time.
Occasionally there'll be subtle changes to dialogue or something. If something was coming across a little bit too menacing, wasn't meant to. I don't know. For example, or I remember once the Comedy About Bank Robbery, the ending.
I was going to say
changed. That's one of the most major things that can happen, which is still very minor. The ending just changed ever so slightly. It was actually just basically one line dialogue, literally one very brief action was omitted to make the ending a little bit less sinister. That was all.
Yes, and I've noticed that they also made a change in Hairspray recently. Oh. Yes, it's Seaweed in one of the songs when they are when he's freeing Penny. I think the song is Without Love. He used to show his knife, but now he doesn't. He just goes around. He goes and cuts her free. So I think that's a small change to kind of
he doesn't what's the word, like present the knife.
He doesn't present the knife anymore. Yeah. So because before his presenting of the knife was associated with him singing "I'm from the Ghetto," which looked really bad in my opinion, because the show is exactly trying to break these stereotypes, and that was reinforcing the stereotype, which is ridiculous. So he doesn't do that anymore. He still sings that.
Someone pointed out, obviously, in one of the previews, and they changed
it. It is something that had struck me, actually. It's something that I had thought when we first saw it, and now he doesn't do that anymore. He sings the song normally, but he just cuts her. Because look, people can have pocket knives.
Cuts her free.
Cuts her free. Yeah. No, he's not a serial killer.
Unlike Link, who makes multiple creepy comments.
Oh, you're so beautiful when you're behind bars. What?
And when you're unconscious.
When you're unconscious, yeah.
Anyway, but basically, because the tip is essentially go see previews. Generally speaking, are cheaper, so you should go see them. Which is a very simple tip, but the reason the thing to flesh out basically is if you're not in the know. People may be afraid to go to previews.
Yes.
And don't be, because they are 99% the same show. As Deborah's mentioned, the kind of the most extreme kind of examples, and you've kind of got they're going to have very subtle changes. And if you didn't like the show, or if you did like the show but weren't blown away by it, you're really not going to care about not seeing the couple of tiny changes.
No.
If you loved the show, really loved it, go back and see it.
Yeah.
See it again, because you probably want to see it again anyway. Go back and see it once previews are finished, and you might enjoy kind of saying, "Oh, why not subtle shape?" And 9 times out of 10, you probably won't spot a single thing.
Oh yeah, that is very true. But
it's a good excuse to go back and check it. And then 1 time out of 10, you might spot something different and be like, "Ah, cool!
I'm so clever. I spotted it."
It's different. And then the only time there'll be major changes, like for example, when Martin Gare originally opened, it was basically rewritten whilst it was still being performed,
right? And
then ended up closing for a couple months to be rewritten again.
Wow. Okay.
But then the thing is, we're now in the territory where if you went to see previews, yes, the finished show is going to be very different. But you're now in a really unique group of people who got to see the original version, and no one's going to get to see that ever again.
That's what I was going to say. That you're seeing something that will never be seen again, potentially.
So the worst case scenario is 1 time in 1,000 when there are major changes. That's so unbelievably rare. It'll probably never happen to you if you go to previews the rest of your life. And even if it does, you've actually just entered kind of an elite league of people.
Yeah.
So there's no downside to previews.
Yeah. Go see previews.
They're cheaper. So on to our Far Too Many Notes section, which this week we are discussing adapting to stage.
Yes. It seems, I think it's very common to see book adaptations to screen. So we have lots of TV shows and we have lots of films based on books. But we have noticed a trend of things being adapted to the stage, especially, I think, novels.
But it's not new.
It's not new. No.
In fact, I mentioned, for example, earlier on, The Phantom of the Opera is based on the novel by Gaston Leroux.
Les Mis?
Les Mis is based on the novel by Victor Hugo. Notre Dame de Paris is based on the novel by Victor Hugo.
Cats is based on the book of poems by T.S. Eliot.
The something book of practical old possum cats or something by T.S. Eliot.
Old Possum's book, I think.
Old Possum's book of practical cats. And then I'm trying to think what else. Hamilton is based on an autobiography.
Not
an autobiography, a biography.
Yeah, Wicked is based on a book that's based on a book.
It's based on a fanfic book, essentially, right?
Yeah, but it's a book that's based on a book.
Yeah, the thing is, it's not new, not even close to being new. And then I know that, for example, To Kill a Mockingbird's getting a play.
It is, yeah.
It might not even be new. Might be a new composition. It might be a new production. Actually, I'm not sure. So it's not new whatsoever.
No, but it's. I think what we've been noticing, at least I've been noticing, that a lot of books that are possibly lesser known, like less known than things like Les Mis, like they're not classics, are being adapted. So more kind of newer books are being adapted.
Such as
A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness.
Oh, yeah. Or La Belle Sauvage.
La Belle Sauvage, but so I kind of would say Philip Pullman, but I would say that maybe his Dark Materials trilogy has kind of reached the level of modern classic almost.
Well, yeah, I mean we're currently awaiting the third series, the BBC adaptation. Right?
Yes, exactly. But then again, there's also other things that don't not necessarily that are turned into musicals, as Chris mentioned, To Kill a Mockingbird. I have seen the most wonderful production of Jane Eyre. Mm-hmm. Which I actually went back to see. There was also a production of Jane Austen's unfinished The Watsons, and that I am very sad about not having gone back to. I actually managed to catch it very briefly because it was on very briefly, and it was meant to transfer to the Harry Pinther Theatre last year. But obviously, it got cancelled. I am now on a waiting list to hear when it comes back, and I hope it does. It was written by Laura Wade and directed by Samuel West. It was such a wonderful production, and it was more than that. So this is inspired by the Jane Austen story, but also a continuation because obviously it's not finished. So they had to work with it, and there's so many clever things about that play. I love to see it again.
We've seen a stage adaptation of Pride and Prejudice as well.
We have,
I never see it, but there is a Shawshank Redemption play, which I'd love to see.
A Shawshank Redemption play, yes. In Brazil, there's a musical version of Pride and Prejudice. Yeah, and there's also. We actually saw Chronicles of Narnia as well, and that production of
several versions.
Yes, but that particular one that we saw is actually coming back apparently on a touring version.
Oh, really?
It's very Christmassy, and it has immersive aspects to it that we loved. So if you manage to catch that, do, because it's great. I was thinking of other things that we did see as well, like My Brilliant Friend, which was actually two plays.
My mum took us to because she loves the books.
Yeah, by Elena Ferrante.
Isn't that a trilogy?
It's a quartet.
Quartet.
Yes, I haven't read those yet. I keep meaning to. But yeah, so we saw that. That was a very different experience, especially because we didn't know
basically
one of the books. Yes.
Yeah, we didn't know that. So I mean, neither of us have a qualification in adaptations or adaptations, which it's not. I don't think there's such thing as degree in adaptations, but there's definitely.
Adaptation studies is definitely.
It's actually a full
I don't know if it's an undergrad.
I thought it was more a specialization within English.
I think but adaptation studies is just a field.
Yeah,
that you can
it's definitely a full field. It's definitely a full field. I was saying, So I mean, I've a degree in theatre, and Deborah has a PhD in literature. So whilst we're not specifically well versed in adaptations, we have the groundwork to discuss it.
And we have friends who are very good at adaptations and have studied them. And thank you, Anna, for all the books you've sent me. I will read them eventually.
Well, this isn't meant to be a super academic discussion about it. It's more meant to be just kind of we'll draw on our academic backgrounds to a certain extent, maybe because the way I see it, the positive thing I see about adaptations or adaptations is it's an opportunity for a fresh pair of eyes to improve a story and fix issues. Because how often is there a story you love, a film you love, a book you love, with one or two elements or choices that you hate?
And not only that, but also to bring that story to our times. And I don't just mean by making it modern, but also making it for the public that is going to see it now, rather than the public that was going to consume it 200 years ago.
Hamilton is actually kind of an example of that, I think, where Miranda expressed it as the story of America then told by America now. Right?
Yeah,
and that's what it is. That's why it's got ethnic minorities playing these white characters and stuff, and using hip hop to tell this classical story, so
Yeah.
to speak. I don't know why it's classical, because it's old, I guess. Because people back then
Was
were
the
classical.
foundation of
Um,
the US as
yeah.
I've come to know it as a nation, I guess.
Yeah. So that's a good example, I think, of what you just talked about.
Yeah.
To bring it, modernizing it to our times,
Yeah.
but not by just changing the setting. To be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's a really, I mean, like, because I don't know, I'm rewatching Dexter, for example, at the moment in preparation for the new. There is no Dexter musical. I'm very sad about that. But
Can you imagine that?
that'd be great. But we have seen Michael C. Hall in a musical.
Yes.
Which wasn't very good, sadly, but we have seen him on stage. For example, I'm watching this because this is what made me think about this, because people because people are often critical of changes that adaptations make, and sometimes that's justified. Very often, in fact, it's justified. But the kind of the positive attitude, I think, as I said, is there's an opportunity, looking at it as an opportunity to get a fresh pair of eyes on something and make improvements. And so what made me think of that was the fact that I'm rewatching Dexter in preparation now for season 9, and there are elements. There's one. This isn't meant to be about Dexter. But basically, there's one massive thing in Dexter that happens, which I just think completely derails a lot of it, and I'm just kind of pretending it hasn't happened and just ignoring it, because it's the only way that I can kind of reconcile the entire plot and the characters' actions and everything is by just pretending this bit didn't happen. I'd love to see an adapt. And if there was an adaptation,
You don't want that bit to have happened.
It wouldn't happen because it's not needed.
Right.
And a competent adapter who's trying to adapt it to the whole, to 8 seasons worth of story to 2.5 hours is 100% going to get rid of it. Like Death Note, for another good example, where one of the main characters in Death Note is just kind of killed off and replaced by 2 rubbish versions of himself, and they just got rid of that.
Yeah.
In fact, with the exception of the anime, which is basically a page panel for panel, a perfect adaptation almost of the manga. Every adaptation of Death Note removes these characters. Actually, there's one of them didn't, but they still condensed in a way that made sense.
Yeah.
And it's just So there's I don't know. There's loads of things I adore, loads of stories I adore that have 1 or 2 elements and / choices that I'm just get rid of it.
Yeah, I think beyond that as well, I think one of the few things I do know about adaptation studies is that fidelity is not really a concept they really work with, because we kind of moved away from that. You're not trying to be faithful to the original material, scene by scene, and beat by beat. You are trying to be truthful to it. And to the story, you're telling the story, but the story has to work in this new medium. It's a different medium. It will need to use different resources. It will, if for example, let's take a book that is written in the first person narrator. You can't really do that on stage very easily or very successfully. It's very hard to do. So maybe you won't have a first person narrator. You will follow the story through someone's eyes. You'll have a main character, and that character might be the one who will be singing the most if it's a musical, or who will be leading you through the story. But it's unlikely. Well, if it will almost feel a bit like narrators can often do, feel like crutches. It will almost feel like cheating to have someone tell you what's happening on stage. So they will show you, because it's a very visual medium. So there's some differences that you do have to account for, just because it's a different medium and it has different needs.
So I'd almost go further than to say it has different needs, to actually say, and that you have different resources, to say that a fundamental part of a good adaptation stage, I think, or any adaptation, is actually it's basically mandatory to use the important elements and unique elements of the new medium.
Yes.
So if you're not, for example, what are the most important elements of theatre? Well, as a medium, well, look, that's a whole other discussion topic. So indulge me for now as I just give you my claim. So my claim, it's debatable, right? My claim would be kind of Aristotelian values, right? The writings of Aristotle and the Poetics. So, having said that, I think all fiction, in my opinion, actually needs to be Aristotelian. And in fact is Aristotelian. I wrote my thesis on this, in fact. But basically the idea of catharsis, pity, experiencing pity and fear because they're the most difficult because of the most difficult emotions to rehearse and practice in a safe environment. That's what theatre's for, and all fiction by extension. The phenomenological impact of sharing a room with the actors. So phenomenology is kind of study of the experience of life, I guess, is probably the best way of putting it.
I never quite understood that, to be honest with you. I studied that in university,
likewise,
and it's always gone over my head a bit.
It's really hard, but that's the way I'd explain it. Phenomenology is kind of the so we have the Cartesian approach to the world is basically the kind of that the world has a definite meaning, and we interpret it imperfectly due to our senses, and we should do our best when we view. And the Cartesian approach to theatre would be we should do our best to remove our bias and remove our emotions almost, and just kind of logically try and process what is happening, what the meaning of what's happening on the stage in front of us is. And then the phenomenological approach would be actually to embrace the emotions and senses and individual interpretation, combine it with kind of what the external to get the true meaning.
Yeah.
Phenomenology would actually say, no, your emotional interpretation is actually part of the actual meaning.
Yeah. And it probably is, right? Listen to our lists and what they mean to us. Yeah. Shows mean things to us. They're not. I think it's very, very, very hard. Even with a PhD in literature, I think it's very hard to detach yourself from a story to the point that you are analyzing the story without. I think it's impossible. You can't analyze something without you.
And theatre's not remotely unique in that sense. You can have that, but I think that our emotions go into a performance and influence our understanding of the performance in a much more profound way when you're sharing the room with the actors and the creators and the fiction.
Yeah, and you're also sharing the room with the other people sharing the story.
Precisely, it's a much more of a shared experience. Don't get me wrong, you go to a film theatre as well, but it's flat screen. There's a lot less. I think. So basically, the phenomenological, probably just that very brief breakdown of Cartesian and phenomenological approaches, but I think the phenomenological approach to theatre, whilst not unique to theatre, is vastly more important to theatre than other mediums. So I would say that the Aristotelian experience of catharsis and the profound phenomenological approach is the most important part of theatre. So that said, indulge me in that. You might think the most important aspect of theatre is something different, and that's fine. But whatever it is you're putting in there instead of what I'm saying, Aristotelian values and phenomenology, if your adaptation is not utilizing that and exploring that to its fullest, and actually not just to its fullest, but putting it to the front. Why has it been adapted? Why are you bothering?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I also am of the opinion that not necessarily every story suits every medium. Sometimes they suit best the medium that they were originally created in,
and sometimes not.
Sometimes not, and sometimes the new version is better for other reasons. Maybe it would have suited. I always think of the novel Brooklyn.
Oh yeah.
By Colm Tobin. I always get his surname wrong. Which was adapted. Which the screenplay is actually a film now. It was adapted by Nick Hornby, and I think personally that the film is a masterpiece, whilst the book is a drag. And also, not only is it a drag, it's also too short. It's both things. So it's which is hard to it's hard to do.
It's achievement in some ways.
It is, yeah. So I think but it's not necessarily because it doesn't suit the novel medium. It's mostly, I think, it's because what the film and the screenplay managed to do was just better with the story.
Yeah. Well, I haven't studied film. We would need Mike for that. But I couldn't tell you what the most important fundamental aspects of film is. But I guess the adaptation utilizes them to the film.
It does, yeah, it definitely does, yeah. And also gives agency to a character that has no agency in the novel, which it's hard for me. It's very hard to swallow.
Yeah, well, that's just a fundamental change. That's not reliant on the medium. That is just something that outside set of eyes has gone. This character hasn't got enough agency and needs more agency.
Yeah,
and the story would be better if they did.
Yeah,
and they did it. And that's kind of back to my first point, which is just most important. I think it's an opportunity for a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it kind of in theatre in a way is also I think it has restrictions that film doesn't have, especially nowadays with CGI. Film. Yes.
Film has restrictions.
Film doesn't. No, theatre has restrictions that film doesn't with CGI, and then theatre therefore kind of calls upon the audience to suspend their disbelief in different levels, and you kind of
engage in a secondary belief. as Tolkien would have said.
Yes, yeah, whatever school you are alleged to. But yeah, so I think it asks things from the audience that a novel won't, a film won't, and equally a book asks things from its readers, and a film asks from its audience. So it's just different. It needs different elements, and it uses different elements to tell the story. So not only will it change the story and maybe change elements of the story, but again, it will change how it's presented to you, and it will use different things to look. For example, and this is when we were talking about Once, actually, I never mentioned it, but Once, the set of Once is actually a pub, but they use all set pieces are chairs a lot of the time. So chairs, so they're a chair, and you're meant to know that they're on the bed, and things like that. And it kind of works, but in a film it wouldn't really work. So you do need the bed in the film. It's just different.
Yeah, well, that's it, because the secondary belief. As I like to say, that has been created on a stage, or that you engage with on a stage, is very different.
Yeah.
In fact, a film has unlimited, essentially, resources to create the secondary belief.
But that's why I think
you can close the camera down, stop the camera, and get a bed on, and then start the camera.
And the book can describe a bed to you.
Yeah,
it can talk about the bed, but but theater is limited in that particular sense. It's not limited in other senses, but it's just interesting.
It's one of the reasons we're always so impressed when a stage show's set is like phenomenally accurate, like when we try anything.
Yeah,
else,
but I'm equally impressed when it's very minimal and it still does the job.
Yeah, and when it's still very minimal, and it allows you to continue to engage in your secondary belief.
Yeah, or suspend your disbelief.
We should have an entire conversation about this, because the whole secondary belief thing is that if you are actually consciously suspending your disbelief, then it's already failed.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, but that's something for another time.
We should discuss this.
Yeah. But I haven't read Tolkien, so I should probably read his theory, his thesis on it.
He wrote an essay on it.
Anyway,
And
an example of that, of something that works and doesn't work. For example, and this is a famous one, and a lot of people have engaged with it to some extent. Cats as a book of poems that was transformed into a musical / ballet. It's very much a dance show, very dance focused. When you're at the theater, it's a very different experience. It's very hard to explain to you why. I really enjoy Cats. I enjoyed the musical very much. I obviously hated the film for many reasons, but mainly, and when I heard it was being turned into a film, I was just like, that's not going to work, because what happens on stage, it's just it's people dressed up as cats.
Yeah, there is a film version of the Palladium production. Was it Palladium?
Yeah, I think it was.
I think it was originally Palladium. Yeah, there's a film version of the West End production that was just filmed.
Yeah, like Hamilton.
Like Hamilton, but without an audience.
Mm-hmm.
Which works. It holds up.
Yes,
have you seen that one?
I have not. I don't think I've seen the whole thing.
Definitely seen parts.
Yeah,
of it.
yeah. So, but still, and again, you miss it because you miss some aspects of it because you're not there in person. It was meant to be seen there, that particular production, but it still works better than the film.
Much better.
But as I said, when I heard about the film, I was kind of certain it wasn't going to work, and I couldn't see how it was possibly going to work, because they were asking us to believe those CGI people were cats. But why did not have CGI cats?
And also the proportions are all wrong.
Well, yes, there's a picture of my cat with cutlery, and that just shows how wrong the proportions were in the film. So yeah, that's one example of something that does not. I don't think it works on screen, but it works on stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, not everything's suited to every medium.
Yeah.
But also, the poem was heavily adapted. It was basically the lyrics of the poem were turned to the songs, but everything else was kind of added.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned kind of limitations of theatre, for example, and something I wanted. Obviously, you've got book to stage, you've got film to stage, but you also have stage to stage adaptations in a weird way. This is kind of not completely, but. But it just made me think of the second time we saw Jesus Christ Superstar in Regis Park Open Air Theatre when the actors themselves were being socially distanced.
Oh yeah.
And how we thought the first version of that show, the first production of it, had a bit of identity crisis between being a full staging or concert and didn't quite know what it wanted to be and had some issues as a result.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one, basically, when faced with even greater limitations, they actually ended up kind of utilising the social distancing, where we had this kind of for example, Jesus and Judas want a hug, but they can't for example. They want to. They actually.
Yeah,
We had
yeah.
I don't think that was ever done. There was ever a moment literally where they tried to hug or anything. But there was this. We had this physical representation of the separation between the characters.
Yeah.
Where they want to engage but they can't.
Mm-hmm.
And then same thing. Mary Magdalene obviously is in love with Jesus, and they can't be together. We had a physical representation. It basically, the limitations kind of actually made the director make much more clever decisions.
It worked better,
automatically.
weirdly, yeah.
And that was kind of he basically had to adapt his own directing, his own direction into a new version because of new limitations, and as a result, it was a lot better. So I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
The fact that you can technically have an adaptation of within the same medium.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just a couple of examples. Like I mentioned, book to stage. Death Note we mentioned.
Yeah.
Hunchback of Notre Dame definitely makes. This is just going through examples of when I say opportunity for a pair of fresh eyes to fix certain aspects, or just like Phantom of the Opera removes the character of what's he called, the Persian, who is a narrator in the book.
Well, see, yeah, you wouldn't have us. What I was saying, you probably wouldn't have the narrator in the same way you would have in the book.
They just took him right out of it because he's not necessary. It also condensed characters. In the book, it's actually Raoul's older brother who is the Vicomte de Shang, whatever it is. Raoul is not the Vicomte; he is just the younger brother.
That makes more sense though if he is.
Just get rid of that character. It makes so much more sense. You don't need.
You have to remember as well.
Game of Thrones got the film. Sorry, the TV adaptation of Game of Thrones condensed many characters and got rid of many characters, but it needed to do it maybe 8 times as much as it did it. It still had far too many characters.
Yes, it did, and they all looked the same. But let's not go down that rabbit hole.
No, but I'm just saying, condensing characters, removing characters, is super important sometimes. You don't want, and Hunter Notre Dame said, that also isn't. Doesn't Frodo have a brother in the book as well? He does, I think. And again, I think in the book, his brother is actually the really, really nasty one. And Frodo's much more of a flawed, damaged person.
Yeah, this is not the one I was thinking of. Is not really an adaptation to stage, but if you probably know Pride and Prejudice, and the film adaptation by John Wright from 2005 actually removes one of Bingley's sister.
Sisters, yeah.
Yeah, one of his sisters, yeah, and her husband.
Because only Caroline matters. I forgot he had another one.
Yes, he does, yeah. And she definitely doesn't matter, and her husband doesn't matter. They're used comically really well in the series.
Yeah.
But they're not necessary, especially for a film that you have a very limited
I can remember
time.
a second person being there, but I don't know who it was.
Louisa.
And then filmed to stage, we have Back to the Future, which we're looking forward to seeing very soon. We also, which I'm interested to see. There are some changes I think need to be made. I think I mentioned our very
There are
first
changes
episode.
that need to be made for our times as well.
And I'm very excited. I'm not excited, but I'm very eager to see if they'll make them. Because that's a really interesting example of like the fact that it's an opportunity for a fresh set of eyes. That when I was talking about how much I was looking forward to seeing Back to the Future, I actually mentioned I think they need to change some things.
Yeah.
And then Hairspray, we talked about how the film. So the stage show is an adaptation of a non-musical film, and then the musical film is an adaptation of the stage musical, which makes some positive changes.
Yes, definitely.
Plot-wise.
I was thinking as well of certain clever uses. You never got to see Jane Eyre, but if you know Jane Eyre, you know that Jane Eyre is very famous for having initiated the trope of the mad woman in the attic. So you have the main one of the main characters in Jane Eyre has a wife, and she is trapped in the attic. And she's a very minor character minor as in she has a very important role, but she's very minor throughout the novel. But what they did was, because they have a band on stage for that musical, they have a small band on stage singing kind of not singing but playing folksy songs, and they also have a woman in red. So the whole production is kind of grey and beige, but they have this woman in red always in the background doing kind of singing kind of like an aria. It's kind of like unique use of color and of song. She sings bits throughout as well. So almost because there's a lot of theory about this and how she is like Jane's mirrored image, like she is the other, and she is always there throughout her story. So she's very cleverly placed in the story.
The last kind of aspect of adaptations I talk about is the one you often hear from people saying the opposite end of the spectrum of people saying you shouldn't make any changes. It has to be exactly, and obviously as we've touched on, we don't agree with that because obviously not everything suits every medium. Sometimes you want to make positive. You can't possibly have an erasure sometimes. In a new medium, whereas for example the book might have a narrator, but then, like we talked about in Phantom, for example. But then the other aspects of it, the other end of the spectrum is when people are super accommodating and say you just have to get the spirit of it across. As long as the most important thing is the spirit of the story is translated, and I think that's a little bit that lets them off the hook a little bit too much because I to me, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings have the same spirit, which is ultimately the hero's journey, good versus evil, good conquering evil, right? And you wouldn't say Star Wars is a film adaptation of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, so
even though they haven't. So I think when people say that they're being a little bit too generous, there is more that needs to be pulled across than the general spirit of a story.
So I guess we enter into a different debate, and this is something potential for next time, and we probably need more reading to have this discussion, which is the difference between versions, a different version of a story, and an adaptation of a story. Are they the same thing? I think there's a story inspired by another story, so I think there's lots of different possibilities there that can be discussed, and I'm sure people who study these things have discussed them at length as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I remember, speaking of Lord of the Rings again, I remember Philippa Boyne? No, it was Fran Walsh. I remember Fran Walsh, one of the writers, saying when kind of met with criticism that Tom Bombadil doesn't appear in the films, she said two things, which is one, this is our version of this story. This is not the story. It's our version of it. And the other thing she mentions is Tom the hobbits. Tom Bombadil is a character met in the Old Forest, quite near the opening of Fellowship of the Ring. The hobbits are in the Old Forest, and then they're out of then they're out of it. Yeah. And she says, "You don't know they didn't meet him."
Yeah. We don't see it.
We don't see it. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. So that's just two. Yeah. So.
In our versions, an adaptation is also a version, and also makes me think. I think
an adaptation is a version, and a version is an adaptation. I don't think those two things are. I understand there's a subtle and also not so subtle difference, and I understand they're both absolutely, completely valid and worthy of deep, separate
analysis,
analysis and comparison. But I think for the purposes of someone just for non-academic purposes, they are basically the same thing.
Yeah, I think, and what you just said about Lord of the Rings is that, and it makes me think of translation in general as well. How, for example, if I were to translate, let's say Pride and Prejudice, because we're talking about it. If I were to translate Pride and Prejudice to Portuguese, it is Jane Austen's. It's Deborah's Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
It's my translation of that novel. It's still going to be the text is still going to be Jane Austen who wrote it. It's her story, but it's going to be my choice of words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just and Lord of the Rings was called Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
But I think my point is that it's not enough that you've got good versus evil. You have to have, like, Frodo has to exist. If you haven't got Frodo, you haven't got Lord of the Rings.
Sure.
Sure. And I just think people, when they say the other end of the spectrum where you're saying the important thing is to get the spirit of the original across. Yes, that's not the important thing. It's an important thing.
I think what they mean is, for example, the fact that, and you're talking about Lord of the Rings, the fact that that speech that Sam gives Frodo at the end, like it's for his, why we do it. Yes, it's not actually in the books.
No, it's not.
But it's in the spirit of the books, and it's something
that
Sam.
The spirit of the books,
it is something Sam would have said, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it's meant by it. It's true to that character. It's true to that story.
Sure.
That's what it means. I think that's how I use it anyway.
Well, people should say what they mean.
But that's what it is.
What they say.
I guess it's because saying just the spirit is very broad. So
it's far too broad.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
I understand.
It's been too generous and to.
No, it has to have some elements. Definitely, I guess it has to maintain some elements.
I guess
of the story.
I'm trying to think of a really terrible adaptation.
I have. So this is very again.
I told one.
Go on.
The Golden Compass. The film.
Yes, that was very bad.
Which bankrupted the same production company that made Lord of the Rings because it was so bad.
That was very bad. There's also, and this is again a bit more niche. A few years ago, they decided to do essentially big names to rewrite Jane Austen's novels to the modern time. So they were all kind of contemporary stories based on Jane Austen's stories, and one of them was Sense and Sensibility, obviously the first one that came out. And essentially, the person who did this just took the original story and put it in the 21st century.
Where would work, would it?
It does not work in the 21st century. The issues don't work, so you do need to adapt.
This makes me think of BBC's Sherlock. which this is a very unpopular opinion, I think it's absolute tripe, because the stories do not work in the modern era whatsoever. And also because Benedict Cumberbatch's depiction of Sherlock Holmes is a different human being.
Yeah, but
that's actually, you know what? I'm going to go for a less controversial one than the fact that I don't like Benedict Cumberbatch's depiction of Sherlock Holmes, nor the entire show itself. I'm going to go for one that's probably less controversial. Irene Adler appears in one of the early episodes, and has a different personality, is in a different story, and does different things. She is a 100% different human being, different character who shares the name. She is not an adaptation of the character in any way, shape, or form. She is a brand new character, not in the spirit of the old character.
Fair
and
enough.
then given the same name. And that's not good. And that isn't a truly perfect example of a freaking appalling adaptation.
What I meant to
say...
say...
I actually think that Sherlock, the character himself, is actually the same. But people are probably less willing to go with me on that one.
Well, I think if you read the Sherlock Holmes books, you will see that Sherlock is not actually a horrible human being.
No, not at all.
And he isn't in Sherlock. So I mean, there's definitely
and the way
issues.
Holmes just behaves is not in the spirit of the character Sherlock Holmes.
Well, there you go. That's Chris hating Sherlock for you. I'm sure he could talk about it for hours if you want.
I mean, the Moriarty is more forgivable because you don't really see him in the books.
You don't know him well, yeah.
But my God,
but,
do I hate Andrew Scott's.
But the thing is, I'm not saying I don't think
I hate that show. Sorry.
What I was talking about with Sense and Sensibility is not that that Sense and Sensibility can't be brought into the 21st century, but it needs some elements of the story to be changed for it to work.
Which
because
Pride and Prejudice.
Sense and Sensibility, because some elements of the story just don't work nowadays, and the laws have changed. Laws have changed, literally, like the way we live the world has changed.
I can immediately see how those stories don't work.
So you need to change certain aspects of it to make them work. But yeah, so essentially, I think, we've been gone on about it for such a long time, and we can definitely continue and definitely do a part 2 of this, and delve more deeply into it. But yes, we have been definitely enjoying. I think I do enjoy adaptations, and I get excited when I know there's an adaptation.
The vast majority of stage shows are adaptations.
Yes, and films as well.
Yeah.
Guys, everything is books.
Everything is books. And Hollywood's been out of ideas for the last decade, as you might have noticed. They've been remaking stuff.
Disney certainly has.
But yeah, let us know if you would like to hear part 2. I definitely think I feel we've kind of covered all the basic elements.
Maybe in the future when we've seen some more adaptations and talk about them. There's definitely more stuff coming up. You know, The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman is coming up, which I haven't seen. I know it's open before, but we haven't seen it.
Or if you have any good books on or documentaries on the topic of adaptation, that would be good for us to read or view, to better inform ourselves and how to discuss this topic. Let us know.
Tell us how we're wrong as well.
Yeah, restricted.view on Instagram. Let us know what you guys think. But yeah, adaptions, ultimately a good thing in the world. Sometimes done badly, sometimes done well. I think that's a very what a great conclusion we've come to. So that's about all we have time for. This is one of our longest episodes. We made the drastic error of deciding to talk about our 5 favourite musicals and a topic as deep as adaptations all in the same episode, because they both kind of warranted enormous levels of discussion. We probably shouldn't have put them in one episode.
Probably not.
And we kind of cut ourselves short on, well, both to a certain extent. I definitely could have discussed my 5 musicals for significantly longer, as I'm sure you could have.
Absolutely.
We definitely scratched the surface of adaptations. I probably could have spoke the entire time about adaptations.
Yeah, so if you want us to analyse those our top 5 specifically, that's something that we can definitely do.
Yeah, we can do deep dives into specific shows, no problem.
If you don't want that, we might do that anyway, because we quite like talking about the show.
Yeah. But if you really don't want that, if that's exactly what you don't want, also go to restricted.view on Instagram and let us know.
Yes, let us know.
So I'm actually away this weekend at a games convention, but I'll be back and I'll be off for the rest of the week, thankfully. So we're planning to finally go see a show that we've been meaning to see for quite some time, but unfortunately closed down for a bit due to COVID. So hopefully we'll be back next week with a review.
Yes, and thank you for listening to us all this time. And let us know, as Chris said, let us know what you think. Let us know your top 5 musicals and your favourite show adaptations.
And remember, see more shows.